what's the foray into film? When do you go from I want to be an author when I grow up to I want to be a filmmaker, or is it all kind of one?
To be honest, I wanted to be an author. I want to be an actor as well. I ended up in Hollywood to be an actor because that's why I actually have a degree in theater, and that's what I've always loved. But I was always the one who was writing the stuff that we were doing, or adapting the plays, or whatever. I was always doing the writing, um, and I would write stories and this and that, and I never thought, it's like you wanted to be an author, but like authors are these special people who obviously I could never be one of them because they are so amazing people that they probably live on an island all by themselves. There's just a little author island, and they're brought in there and they're fed tea leaves. I don't know. So I never thought about it. And then I took a class in screenwriting, and that's great, and I'm in Hollywood, so I started doing that, and I caught on. Caught on to an extent. I got a manager. We optioned a TV show. We had stuff going on, but nothing ever actually came of it. It's a long. It's the my career was stuck in development hell. They say that's what it's called. It just never nothing ever happened, and then eventually, after a good number of years doing that. And we moved out of Los Angeles to where we are now in New York, and that was a good break for me. I still tried a little, screenplays, but then I thought, it occurred to me, very important thing occurred to me, a lot more books get published each year than movies made. So I probably had a better shot at getting a book made than a movie. But the first thing was, can I write prose? Because writing a screenplay is great. It's all dialogue. It's talk, 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 talk with very little description. Well, that isn't a good book unless you're Dan Brown. So I had to try to put in some, could I write actual prose? So I started with short stories. And after a while, I figured I could do this. And I would be just selling a lot of the short stories that almost everyone I wrote would be bought by somebody. And then it was like, okay, let's try books. I'm ready now. I've decided that I can do. So let's get the larger story. And so naturally, the first thing I did was adapted one of my screenplays. Didn't go anywhere, but it was something I knew the story. The story is done. So now I don't have to. It's outlined. It's written. But that didn't work out as well as I liked. But then I got the books that got me the agents, and then we sold Dr. Fell, and it was all history from there.
I imagine if you're starting with something where you've already written a screenplay and it's your first attempt at an actual prose novel, if nothing else, that's got to make just practicing your first time out with prose a lot easier, already having the story, already having the dialogue.
Yeah, it was. I had the dialogue, although interestingly enough, what I discovered as I'm writing it is that when I write the scene, like there's a scene in a movie, right? There's a scene, and then I translate that to a scene in a book with the same dialogue. In the book, it's a really thin, short scene, and much more. I just feel like it's just a wimpy scene, and it needs more. So I have to expand it and create it and give it more shelter and give it some shading color and whatnot. But you don't have time in a movie to do all that, because then your scenes would be so long. Your movie would be 6 hours, and it's ridiculous. So in movies, it's about cutting it down to like, can you do this? You do this scene with 10 lines. That's great. Now do it with 9. Now, you know what? Make it 8 lines, because that'll get it. Try 5 and get the information out as quickly as possible so we can move to the next scene. And 5 lines may give a full, because of the movie, may give it a full idea, give a full scene, but 5 lines of dialogue isn't enough in a book to really give it more than half a page or more. So it was my own screenplays are a good starting point, and I have a couple more that I'm considering adapting. Always have for a while, but they're just a starting point. But it is nice to have the whole arc of the story is complete. I know what happens in the story. I know how it's going to end. I know who the characters are and what they're doing and their secrets and so forth. And that doesn't have to be created. It's just describing it. That's what has to be done.
So how many screenplays did you have under your belt by the time you're thinking about switching over to novels?
like 8 or 9, maybe, yeah, something around there. And only one never got made. No, no more. No, one got made, but now more like 11 or 12 when I think about it, because I forgot about that whole section. So probably about 10, 11, 12 screenplays were done, and then one was made, and it was horrible. I learned it was made low budget, and the first thing, like, it was an action adventure, and at one point there's this massive. The end was the hero and the villain have this fight, and they go into a river, and they're fighting a river, and they go over a waterfall, and they're fighting. So it's exciting stuff. So it comes time to film it, and it's just the two of them having a fist fight in a small stream, because that's what they can afford. They're not going to send anyone over the waterfall. They're going to punch it out in the stream. And so you get the center idea. At one point they realized they could blow up one small thing, and they're like, that's going to be the centerpiece. And like in the script, it was like a tiny like afterword, but now like, okay, that's going to be the big thing because they have the budget to blow this up. So we're going to blow this up, and oh boy, that becomes the big thing. And it wasn't the script. So I learned a lot about making low budget movies. And the first time I met with the lead, who was this big burly guy, a Dutch cage fighter. And I'd written the beginning to give his character a backstory. I wanted to know where this character came from and what drives him and motivates him. So I had some talk about that and whatnot. First thing, he sits down. I'm sitting with him and the director and myself, and he's like, "Okay, first, I don't say all these words." He starts crossing out whole paragraphs. Too many words. Okay, I can see where this is going. That's Hollywood for you.
It's time for a voiceover. You just get Michael Caine or Morgan Freeman or somebody to narrate, and that's
right.
You're covered. So when you're dealing with with a small production like that, if they're tearing your screenplay apart anyway, and they don't have the money to necessarily film the scenes that you had originally envisioned, can you at least come back to them and say, "Hey, I'm an actor. Can you get me a couple of lines in this thing?" Or... Yeah,
and they offered me a part, but they were filming this section. It was filmed right when my daughter was born, and they were filming some of it in Trinidad, and they offered me a small part that would be in Trinidad, but I couldn't get away for a few days. I mean, my daughter was literally like 3 weeks old, and so I stayed with her. But I got to visit the set because they did part of it in Trinidad and they filmed part of it in Los Angeles. And so when they were on the part in Los Angeles, I got to visit one day, and it was kind of fun. Actually, I do have somebody was in it who is now somebody, which is Michael Ritter, who plays Yondu, or is that his name? The blue guy in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Michael Rooker?
Rooker, that's it. Rooker. Michael Rooker. So Michael Rooker is the big villain in my movie.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it was cool. This was a long time before Guardians of the Galaxy. His big thing at that time had been either Sixth Day with Schwarzenegger or Cliffhanger with Sylvester Stallone. Those were his big things at the time.
He's been around forever.
He has.
Back in Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Right. Yeah. Another good one.
At times, turns out I'm kind of a Michael Rooker fan. I'm just realizing this. I've been watching that guy a long time. Oh, yeah.
There you go. Well, you'll have to pick up. You'll have to find my film. It's called The Eliminator. You can get it on. You can find it on YouTube, and it's a bring a 6-pack.
Sure. Well, seeing as how this is the first time we finally revealed the name of this film, I'm getting the sense that spending the time with your newborn daughter was absolutely the right decision.
Yes, it was. And it wasn't even my title. I had a different title entirely. That's the same thing in books too. Both of my books that were traditionally published ended up with different titles than what I ended up. Similar, close, but they had to make it different for them. In one of them, I think they did better, and one is just as well either way. They did improve one of them. So